My name's Nick Evans, and I'm Technical Director at ExtraMile Communications. We're a multilingual online marketing company. We're based in Staffordshire, just about 40 miles from here, up the M6 at a little town called Eccleshall, which you will never have heard of. But if you're a lady, you would like to go to Eccleshall because they have very nice dress shops there and shoe shops. But they also have ExtraMile Communications. And there are 13 of us in our company, and we do work for a whole variety of companies, both national and international. Our largest client is Apple. We do their email marketing in Europe and beyond, so that's about 26 languages we work in for them. So we're going to be busy tonight because Apple's got announcements tonight. We work for Garmin and a whole raft of other smaller organisations, a lot in the chemical industry, interestingly, both just national or international companies, and we also do things like the high street shops. So our little local flower shop, we do their website, and so websites and email marketing, social media integration, search engine optimization, all of that sort of thing. But our expertise is in the multilingual arena, because that's what we've been doing most of for the past 14 years. So it's given us a lot of experience. And what I'm going to talk about today is the key things that you need to think about when going multilingual, when you're going to go international with your website and with your online communications, because in half an hour it's a big subject to cover, but we're going to have a go at it and see what we can make of it. If you've got questions, it's probably going to be easier if we handle them at the end, because it's noisy in here and I'm stone deaf, so it could be quite an interesting conversation. So let's start with something that somebody said to me in a business meeting only a few weeks ago. He said, "My business is doing really well. 70% of my orders come from overseas, and we've got agents and distributors in every country who do all the talking in the local language for me. We're in the top 3 of Google results for our products. Business is growing gently, so why should I need to spend any money on a multilingual website? I don't believe I need one. My English one is doing the job." What I told him is what I'm going to tell you now. There are about 3 billion internet users in the world, or there will be by the end of this year, 3 billion internet users. And of these, 1.7 billion are in the top 10 largest countries. So these are the countries that use the internet the most. So you can see the figures for yourself. There's 1.7 billion countries in there. You'll notice UK's down here, USA up here. Now, that means that there are another 1.3 billion people in other countries who actually don't appear on this chart. So we're not going to think about those for the moment. We're going to think about these ones. If you take out all the English-speaking ones, so the USA and the UK and India, you're left with over 1.1 billion people in those top countries who can't read your website in English. They can't read it. They have no idea what your website says. And the potential revenue from internet users across the world currently is around £27 trillion. And I bet you'd like your company to have a little slice of that. You know, just 1 trillion would do us, to be honest. There's consumers, there's businesses, there's public services and more. And it's a huge amount of money. But with your English language website, you can address less than a third of that. And that divide is growing as countries become more mature in their online marketing. So if your business relies on the possibility that somebody in deepest Bulgaria can speak a bit of English and they will do the work of passing on your carefully crafted messages and ideas to everybody who is a non-English speaker in Bulgaria, then your company's future is in very uncertain hands. You're relying on someone else's interpretation of what you're doing, and it's not a good bet. How much better, how much more authoritative and welcomed would a Bulgarian website be to the people in that country? It's accessible to everybody, and the website would not only be relevant and clear about your product offerings, it would be findable on local search language, search engines in local language. And your Google ranking in the UK for your website is completely irrelevant in Bulgaria or China or Italy. It doesn't count. So you've got to find a way of getting yourself noticed, and you know how difficult it is to get your English website in this country noticed. And another question that you should ask yourself is, how many products have you bought from a Chinese website recently? There it is. What product are you going to buy? Well, you're not, because not many of you here speak Chinese, though maybe some of you do. I never bet on that. And why won't you buy stuff from this website? Well, it's because you can't read it. You don't know what it says. And this company here could be one of your best potential partners. It could be a company that could make a massive difference to your business overseas, but you can't read the website. You'll never find them. Now, turn that around, and the same thing applies with your English language website. People buy from people who are selling in the language that they read. So a multilingual website shows your customers and your prospects that you're thinking about their needs. That's the point. If they feel that you care about them and they're more likely to trust you, and therefore they're more likely to buy from you. And people rarely buy online from a store which is presented in a language they don't understand. So it becomes self-evident that multilingual websites are the way to go. And going multilingual is part of a strategy. It's not just a one-off. If you go multilingual, you're changing your company, big style. You're not just making a website or printing a few brochures. It includes your website, yes, your email communications, your social media, all the other media. And the question to ask yourself is, when that person in Bulgaria who you have targeted with your website picks up the phone and says hello in Bulgarian, what are you going to do? You've got to have a way of dealing with that. Or if they send you an email or even an order. So how are you going to deal with that? And it's not just customers, it's distributors, resellers, the consumers, people who are on the ground looking at your products. So strategic thinking, really. Some questions here to consider. How many countries are you going to do? The more countries that you do, the more complex and the greater number of variants you're going to have in those communications. Have you got a team of multilingual partners, or a team in-house or multilingual partners? In your company, is senior management bought in? You might be senior management, so will everybody else be bought in? Where are you going to start? What's the first thing you're going to do to start that process rolling? And what are you trying to achieve by going multilingual? What are your objectives? You've got to have business objectives for the end view. And perhaps most of all, what's going to get in your way? What are the hurdles you're going to have to jump? So the website is the hub of your marketing strategy. It is actually the point where everything comes into. So how does your social media, how does your email marketing fit in with your marketing strategy and resources? Well, it does it like this. The website's the hub, and all of these elements are inbound elements coming from online and offline stuff that you're doing. So all of these things are driving traffic to your website. And red arrows, well, these are things where people are talking to you back as well. So it's a two-way process. And then the blue arrow is the consequence. It's the output from your marketing activity that gives you sales leads. And if you think about your website as the hub, and everything else is serving that, is delivering traffic to your website, then you won't go too far wrong, because you won't then just compartmentalize your social media or your email marketing. You'll know it's part of this greater strategy. So let's have a look. First thing to say about the website itself is, are you going to go multilingual, or are you going to have multiple websites? The two things are very different. Here are multiple websites. So we might have our English language website. We might have a French website. We might have an Italian website, each of which is a clone of the next one. And that's fine. Make a Chinese website and publish it, and the Chinese world might beat a path to your door. But wait until you add a new product range or a new category on your main website. Oh, you've got to do it on your Chinese one as well. Oh, and, well, actually, you've got an Italian one and a French one and a Spanish one. All of a sudden, you've got a lot of work to do there, because every time you add something here, you've got to add it there, there, and there. You end up with multiple websites to maintain. And you'll know from experience, I've no doubt, that unless you're very capable in doing that stuff yourself, it's an expensive process. It's very labor intensive. So one of the alternatives is to think in terms of multilingual websites, websites where you can say, okay, I'm in English at the moment, but actually I want to switch into German. You're seeing the same website, but the content is translated. And a website like that works in a very different way from a standard website, because you have the same engine, but you have all the translations overlaid. So for any given page, you have a raft of translations that are overlaid on it. So if you're calling that website from Germany, you'll see the German pages. If you're calling it from France, you'll see the French pages, and so on. So getting that technology working, it makes the structure of the website simpler. It's a single website. But what happens, you say, when we add a new product? Well, what happens then is this. Let's just have a look at a simple structural diagram. Imagine here's a corporate page, a page in English. So this is a base, a foundation page of your website. All of these are the various countries that you're addressing in your multilingual website. But you haven't translated these pages. So what shines through is the English. However, if you then add in a translated page for one country, when you're in that country, you'll only see the local language. You won't see the English. What that means for you when you're doing, for example, if you've got a product-based website, so you're selling a lot of products, you can add a new product and it will appear in all countries. And immediately it'll appear in English in all countries. That means your website's always complete. But then you can overlay the translation, so you can progressively translate each country and add that product description and everything else in the local language. Now that simplifies the difference between having multiple websites to deal with and a single website with overlays. And this is how we do all our multilingual websites. So, translation. Let's have a talk about this, because translation's just not that simple, unfortunately. Why don't we just use English? Well, English is supposedly a universal language of business communication, but you know, the further south and east you go, particularly in Europe, further south and east you go, the less people speak English. And if you go off the beaten path, if you're dealing with small to medium businesses, for example, in Eastern Europe, then the chances of you having people who are good English speakers get progressively less. So the other question I'd ask you is, what is English? Is it what I speak, which is UK English, or is it American English, or is it Australian English? You need to find a translatable voice. So if your parent company, for example, is American, then the translatable voice of that website or those email marketing bits and pieces that you're doing may well need to be translated into UK English before you spread the word out to other countries. So getting things localized is the next thing as well. Let's talk about localizing. Ducks in a row, sorry. Getting things localized is the thing you do before you translate. Because multilingual usually means multicultural, because you're dealing with very different countries from your home country. And all of the things that happen in those multicultural language websites are governed by local rules and ideas that you need to understand. Let's just sort of consider. You see, it's two sides of the same coin. This you've got to understand the need to localize, and then when you've done your localization, you do the translation. Give you a good example. Let's pretend that this company has got 14 different countries that it addresses with its website. Okay, it doesn't actually, but for the sake of the example, it's an international car parts business, 14 countries, going to develop a new website for it. All the countries have got the same website because it's a single website but with language variants. However, there's more than language variants. 3 of the countries don't sell audio because of local regulations. 2 countries only sell through distributors to resellers. So they're targeting a different audience, but we need the same website and there'll be different pricing on it. 1 country hasn't got an online store, it sells through shops. And for all of the different countries, various products get substituted for local alternatives. You've got to accommodate all of that in one website, one multilingual website. That's what localization is about. And you do localization before you translate. So you make your multilingual website all in English, with all the countries done, with all the varied products, and you change the products that are available in each country. You change the various elements to match the country's needs, the channel they're using, and then you translate. Here's another little example from our own experience a long time ago. Apple did this as an international campaign for Valentine's Day. You'll recognize that this is a long time ago because these are very old iPods. And the campaign that the US created was, in our mind, absolutely brilliant. Truly, madly, deeply. There you go. According to which one you give the appropriate iPod. Absolutely fantastic campaign for America and UK. Utterly, utterly useless for any other country in Europe. Why? Because this depends on the title of a film, Truly, Madly, Deeply. It wasn't called that in other countries. It was called Un Fantasma Enamorat in Spain, and this is what it was called in Germany. Wie verrückt und aus tiefstem Herzen. It doesn't really trip off the tongue, does it? It don't work. It had to be localized. We had to get another strapline, another way of saying this same thing that would translate word for word and that would work. So, localization, really important. So we get to translation. Why don't we use Google Translate, says everybody. Okay? This, you know, we all know and love Garfield. So if you can read those Garfield cartoons, I'll be very surprised, because the content of those cartoons has been put into Google Translate and turned into Chinese, and then the Chinese has been put into Google Translate and turned back into English. It's gibberish. It doesn't work. Now, Google Translate is great for top line, quick idea, maybe I've got the gist of what this web page is all about. It's not good for any detail. It's not good for idiomatic stuff. It's not good for technical stuff. It doesn't work at that level. So it's a very clever system, but you can't rely on it for your website. So you really need to translate. And translation, I'm afraid, is really expensive. We don't do translation. We farm it out to translators. But it's an expensive thing. So you need to do it as efficiently as possible. And you need to do it once. Because if you're going to use the same phrases over and over again, then build yourself a translation library. Because you don't want to be going back and paying to sort of 18, 20p a word for translation for everything that you do. So a way that we organize translations is we get a spreadsheet and we put all the words here. This is just a list of, this is from a website that we were doing, and the words here are all the navigation elements. And we put them all down here, and then we got the translators to fill in the words in the columns. And if they've got any questions, for example, our Czech translator had got a question about what the translation was doing, then they could put a note in there. And that works not just for phrases. You can do it for whole pages of content. So just switch on the wrap the cell, the content within the cell, and then, you know, you can imagine a web page that's got a headline, it's got an introductory paragraph, it's got a big paragraph of content, it's got the title of an image, it's got a call to action on it. All of those things, put them in separate cells, because when that page of Bulgarian comes back to you and they've put all of the content into one solid block, you won't know where to put which bit. So you split it up into the cells, and then you get the translator to put the elements into the spreadsheet. That also can act as your translation library, because you can always add another cell on the side that gives an index, something that you can look up and search for. So that's translation. There is more about translation, because what you translate has an immediate impact on the design and the layout of the thing that you're using. So you might have a couple of blocks of text like this. You know, people like putting little boxes on websites with nice little bits of information to encourage people to click through. That's fine, as long as you're aware that when you translate, those are going to get bigger for all sorts of reasons. So here we've got Polish, and we've got Czech, and we've got Turkish, and all of these are rendering different sizes. Now in German, for example, you can get much bigger, and you get this effect in a lot of languages. So here's an issue where the content that's in the cell will get broken by a word like this. So if you've got a really narrow cell on your website or in your email, a word like that can really break it. It can break it in a way that you might not immediately see, but if you test it on all the different browsers and all the different email clients, sometimes these long words will break up the layout. And to be honest, it doesn't look very pretty. So having a view that these things might change layout is quite important. So pitfalls, there's lots of them, a lot of traps about, and this is why you need to have your wits about you. So getting your translation right, not just good, is a priority. So when we get translations, we also get people to validate the translation, someone who knows the topic, and they are in that field of expertise. So they get the translation done. The validator looks at it and says, yes, it's good translation, but actually we don't say that. We say this, and they put it in the tone of the company, or they put the tone of the element that's being translated. It's also very easy to offend people. You all remember your school boy, girl French, where you are addressing people as tu if you are family members or friends, and as vous if they are adults or they are people who you don't know very well. Well, that applies throughout the world. In many countries, in many languages, you can upset people simply by saying the wrong thing to them, addressing them too formally or too informally. We've already touched on this one. Idiomatic stuff is really problematic. You know, you might think that it's wonderful to quote a bit of Shakespeare, which is just got the right message that you want to get across. If it gets translated, it's gone. You've lost it. So don't use idioms, don't use quotations, clever words, film titles, as we've seen. Think about cultural stuff as well. So, you know, if you address people in Spain and talk about Real Madrid, you've immediately alienated half of the population you're addressing, because they don't support Real Madrid, they support the other one. Think about the complexity of the website. We were talking about whether things are the variations, the localization you need to do. Have you got all the products in all the countries? Are they in stock in all the countries? Are they priced correctly in all the countries? Bear in mind exchange rate. So if the exchange rate changes, is your pricing still right? Is your VAT rate correct in every country? Because those keep changing and they can catch you out. So watching for things going out of stock, you've got to keep a handle on all of that sort of stuff. Currency. This is another one. If you saw the price in pounds of something with a pound sign at the end instead of at the beginning, you'd go, these people don't know my country, they don't know my currency. The same thing applies across Europe. Across Europe, even within the Eurozone, people put the euro sign at the end, they put it at the beginning, sometimes with a space, sometimes without a space. They use commas instead of decimal points. There's all sorts of conventions, and you need to get it right, because if you don't, people go, oh, that's not right, and that's all they see. That's the thing they see. So watch out. Currencies also have abbreviations that they use, put at the end 3 letters. And think about the way they lay out dates and all that sort of stuff. Loads of things to think about. And don't forget the lawyers. It's very easy to get on the wrong side of the law with your email communications or with your website. So think about, for example, in Germany and in Belgium. I'm not sure if this is still true. In Germany and Belgium, you can't say free. You can't give something to someone free. So buy one of these and get a TV free. No, you can't. Nothing's free. You have to say, even if you're only charging €1 for it, you've got to make a charge. So it's got to be, that's the way that it works. And things like the laws relating to privacy, very, very tough on laws like that. Particularly Italy's a good one for that. You need to watch out for. Very briefly, on to content. I mean, getting your ducks in a row for content. How are you going to do this? What content have you got? Think about all the assets that you've got in your company. Okay, you've got your website. For me, that's the most important thing. But if you've got printed material, like the little brochures I've put out, for example, then you need to have those in local language, and someone needs to print those up. You need to have your business cards in local language. You need to have your advertising in local language. How are you going to do this? Even down to, have you got a strapline for your company? You know, every little helps. What's that in Bulgaria? I don't know. But you know, if you're going to put Tesco into Bulgaria, you need every little helps to work just the way it works in the UK. And so having that sort of thing sorted is really important. And then these elements, what do you need to produce? What have you got already? You know, blogs and advertising. And can you synchronize your messaging with product availability? You know, so say you've got 3 countries, you launch a new product. A, is it going to be available in all the countries? B, have you got your message out there for that product so that people will be able to buy it? And the challenge that comes for a lot of companies is about sphere of influence. And this is for a small to medium company that going out into, say, just going into Europe, and you're using partners in Europe to help you. You've got your UK website, all those elements, and it's all under your control. So you then get France, and all the elements of France are under your control. And the same applies to all the other countries that you've got in your sphere of influence. However, and I've seen this many a time, Belgium is sort of in your control, but actually they're rather doing their own thing. And so things don't look quite the same. And in Poland, most of it's the same, but we're missing a few bits. And in Sweden, it's a bit different. And India, well, I'm afraid it's gone completely off the rails, and they're just completely doing their own thing, and so on. You get all of this difference. And so what happens to your corporate identity, your messaging, what happens to the things that define your company and your products in those other countries? They start to go off the rails. And what you actually have to do, and this is a massive challenge, I speak from experience, is to pull your sphere of influence around them as well and say, no, you're not doing it like this. This is how you're doing it because this is the way we are. And that's a really tough one. And all of that applies to everything that you do. So your push and pull, your advertising and your print and brochures and social media, and the pull content as well, the websites and the documentation support materials, all needs to be in your control and needs to be dealt with. And the only way you can do that is really good strategy systems, quality management, and consistency. You've got to have a handle on all of that. And finally in this section, and I'll just breeze through this, how do you address people? How do you capture information? Standard name templates on website forms are like this. Whether it's a website form or a printed form, it doesn't matter. Put your first name here, put your last name there. I'll bet there are people in this audience now who go, I can't fill that in because it doesn't work like that. My name doesn't work like that. This one's a bit better. Put your first and last name. Well, you can ignore the first and last name because in France and Spain and places like that, they'll put their last name first and their first name last, which is really going to screw up your data when you come to data capture that and then use it for mail merge. It doesn't work. So why doesn't it work? Well, you know, here's Björk. Well, okay, Björk, she'll work okay with our standard form. We call her Björk, that's her given name. Gudmunds is her father's name, and Dottir because she's the daughter of. So you can see it's starting to break up a bit there, though. You take this guy, though. How are we going to deal with him? Mao Zedong. What do you call him? Mao Zedong Jiansheng or Zedong Jiansheng? That's his family name, that's his given name, that's his generational name. Which ones does he put in the form and where? And this lady is putting her name the wrong way round because Marta is what we would call her first name. That's her given name. But she writes her name down as Sebastian Marta. Similarly, here's the president of Finland, okay? So, same thing, and his name changes according to which case, in other words, which context you're saying it in. And this lady, well, I'm afraid that Maria José Carreño Quinones you're going to have a real problem with her because she's got lots of names, but not, this guy's name, so this is Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin and his wife Naina Yosovna Yeltsina, their names change because of their sex. And then, of course, this guy has got a massive long name because not only have you got family names and father's name, patronymics in there, you've also got where he's come from and attributes. Fabulous name. I wish I was called that. And it's just, it does not fit our forms. So what are you going to do? What you can do is just have two little slots on your form. Put your full name here. We'd just like to know what you're called, please. And then, what should we call you? If we're sending you an email, what do we say? What do we put in there? Because there is no machine mechanism that's going to pull out the right name from a full name, like our Afghanistani friend there, for example. So we need to know, what should we call you? So, what do you do next? Yes, I'm going to shut up now. What do you do next? You evaluate your market. You consider the languages you're going to deal with, the cultures you're going to address, the context you're going to work in. Then you need to look at your budget, chaps. I'm really sorry, but it's going to cost you money. And you're going to find a good online partner that specializes in multilingual. Oh, here's one I prepared earlier. Thank you very much.